Hi everyone! What if I told you that everything you've been doing to try to believe more was already working? That you were never broken, never lacking, never behind? I used to wake up every single morning trusting with everything I had that I was stuck, that the financial world owned my time, my energy, my life, and I called that doubt. But here's what Bashar taught me that changed everything. That wasn't doubt. That was 100% pure, raw belief just pointed at the wrong thing. You are not someone who struggles to believe. You are someone who has been incredibly faithful to the version of yourself you don't want to be. And the moment I understood that, everything shifted. So if you've ever felt like manifestation just doesn't work for you, stay with me, because what you're about to hear is not another pep talk. It's a complete reframe of how belief actually works. And hey, if this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of conversation we have on this channel. Also, the books that changed my journey and a free PDF on how to interpret angel numbers are all linked in the description below. Let me ask you something. How many times have you sat down, closed your eyes, and tried to force yourself to believe? How many vision boards have you made? How many affirmations have you repeated in the mirror until your voice went flat and the words stopped meaning anything? How many mornings have you woken up and told yourself, "Today I'm going to believe differently," only to find yourself by noon right back in the same mental loop? If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. Here's the thing that nobody in the manifestation space talks about enough. We live in a world that is obsessed with the idea that some people are just naturally more confident than others. That belief is this rare, precious resource that certain people are born with, like good genes or a trust fund. You either have it or you don't. And if you're struggling to manifest your dream life, your financial freedom, your abundance, well, it must be because you just don't have enough of it. That is one of the most damaging myths I have ever encountered. And I say that as someone who spent years inside the financial market, working with numbers, analyzing risk, watching people make and lose fortunes. You know what I noticed? The most financially successful people I worked with were not the ones who never doubted. They were the ones who had learned, consciously or not, where to direct their certainty. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about what belief actually is, because I think most of us have a completely distorted picture of it. We treat belief like it's a volume dial, something you can turn up or down depending on how motivated you feel that day. We think manifestation works like a bank account, where some people just have a higher balance of faith than others. And if you're overdrawn, well, you'd better start doing the work to deposit more. But here's what Bashar, one of the most fascinating teachers on consciousness and quantum reality, says about this, and it stopped me completely in my tracks the first time I heard it. Belief is not something you have more or less of. It is always operating at 100%. Let that land for a second. You are always, in every moment, believing at full capacity. Your trust, your faith, your certainty, it is never depleted. It is never running low. The human mind does not operate on partial belief. It operates on complete, total, absolute investment in whatever it is currently focused on. Think about that in terms of your financial life. When you look at your bank account and feel that familiar knot in your stomach, that sense of this is never going to change, that is you not failing to believe. That is you succeeding completely and powerfully at believing in scarcity. That is 100% of your energetic and mental resources being poured into the reality of lack. When you tell yourself, "I'm not the kind of person that attracts wealth," or "people like me don't get to have financial freedom," that is not weakness. That is an incredibly strong, incredibly consistent, incredibly committed act of belief, just directed at something you don't want. And this is exactly where the myth starts to crack open. Because if belief is always at 100%, if you are never actually lacking the capacity to trust, then the problem was never about how much you believe. It was always only about what you believe in. I remember sitting in my office back when I was deep in the insurance and financial services world, watching the clock, counting down the hours, feeling like my entire life was on a track that someone else had laid down for me. And I used to think, Caroline, why can't you just believe things can be different? Why can't you just have more faith? But I was asking the wrong question entirely. I wasn't failing to believe. I was believing with everything I had that I was stuck, that the corporate ladder was the only path to financial stability, that freedom was something other people got to have. I was a world-class investor of trust. I was just investing it in the wrong asset. And in the world of finance, we know exactly how devastating it is to pour your resources into the wrong asset. You can be the most disciplined, most committed investor in the room, and if you're putting your money into something that doesn't serve your goals, all that discipline just accelerates your loss. The same is true for belief. You can be the most committed, most consistent believer in the world, and if the thing you're committed to is your own limitation, your own lack, your own unworthiness, your own financial ceiling, all that commitment just deepens the pattern. So the first shift, and it's a massive one, is simply this: stop trying to get more belief. You already have all the belief you will ever need. The question we need to start asking is not, how do I believe more? The question is, what am I currently choosing to believe in? Because that choice, that single, quiet, powerful choice, is where everything begins. And in the next part of our conversation, we're going to go even deeper, because once you understand that your belief is always full, you have to face something a little uncomfortable, something that Bashar puts so simply it almost sounds too easy, but lands like a ton of bricks when you really let it in. So now we've established something pretty radical. You are not someone who lacks belief. You are not someone who is incapable of trust. You are, in fact, an incredibly powerful believer, operating at full capacity every single moment of every single day. But then why does doubt feel so real? Why does it feel so heavy, so permanent, so much bigger than us sometimes? Why does it feel like this wall that we just can't seem to get past, no matter how many meditations we do, no matter how many abundance mindset podcasts we listen to on our morning commute? Here is where Bashar says something that I want you to really sit with, because the first time I heard this, I had to pause, rewind, and listen again, and then again. Doubt is not a lack of trust. Doubt is 100% trust in something that is out of alignment with what you prefer. Read that again, slowly. Doubt is not the absence of belief. Doubt is belief, fully activated, fully powered, fully committed, just aimed at the version of reality you do not want to experience. When you wake up in the morning and that familiar voice starts, you're never going to get out of debt. You're never going to build real wealth. Financial freedom is for other people, people who got lucky, people who had a head start, people who are just different from you. That voice is not weakness. That voice is not you failing at manifestation. That voice is your belief system working perfectly, efficiently, and powerfully. It is delivering exactly what it was programmed to deliver. The problem is not the power. The problem is the programming. And I want to use a financial analogy here, because this is something I understood deeply from my years working in financial markets and insurance. Think about a high-frequency trading algorithm. It is an incredibly sophisticated, incredibly powerful system. It executes trades at lightning speed, with precision, with zero hesitation. It does exactly what it was designed to do. Now, what happens if the algorithm was built on flawed assumptions? What if the core logic that drives every single decision is based on outdated data, or worse, data that was never accurate to begin with? The algorithm doesn't slow down, It doesn't second-guess itself. It keeps executing faster, more efficiently, more consistently than ever, but now every trade it makes is moving you further from profit and closer to loss. Your subconscious belief system works the same way. It is a high-performance system. It is always running. It never takes a day off. And when it has been programmed through childhood, through experience, through repeated thought patterns to believe that scarcity is safe, that struggle is normal, that wealth is dangerous or out of reach, it executes on that programming with breathtaking consistency. That is what doubt is. It is your most powerful asset running on the wrong code. I had a client, someone I worked with during a consulting project, who was brilliant, genuinely one of the sharpest financial minds I had encountered in years. She understood markets, she understood risk management, she understood wealth-building strategies at a level that most people spend decades trying to reach. But every time she got close to a breakthrough, every time a real opportunity for financial growth showed up, something would happen. She would hesitate, she would find a reason it wouldn't work, she would pull back at exactly the moment she needed to move forward. She used to tell me, "I just can't make myself believe it's going to work." But that wasn't true. She believed completely. She believed with total certainty that it was going to fall apart. She believed without a single shadow of doubt that she wasn't ready. She believed so strongly in her own financial ceiling that she had built an entire internal risk management system designed to keep her safely beneath it. That is not a lack of belief. That is belief at its most powerful, protecting a story that no longer serves her. And here is the part that I find both uncomfortable and incredibly liberating at the same time. This means that doubt is a choice. Now, before you close this video thinking I'm about to tell you to just choose to be positive, stay with me, because this is not about toxic positivity. This is not about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. This is about something much more precise, much more quantum, much more real than that. When Bashar says doubt is a choice, he doesn't mean it's a simple choice. He doesn't mean you can just snap your fingers and redirect decades of subconscious programming in an afternoon. What he means is that at the deepest level of your consciousness, beneath the noise, beneath the old stories, beneath the financial anxiety and the limiting beliefs about money and worthiness, there is a you that is always choosing, and that you has never been powerless. I think about the moment I finally decided to leave the financial and insurance world behind. Not the day I handed in my notice, but the moment, weeks before that, when I was sitting alone and I realized something. I had been trusting with absolute certainty that my value was tied to my title, that my financial security depended on a system I had grown to resent, that freedom was a risk I couldn't afford. And in that moment, I asked myself the same question Bashar asked. Why am I choosing to trust this instead of something I actually prefer? Not because the fear disappeared, it didn't, but because I finally saw the fear for what it was, not evidence of reality, but evidence of where I had been investing my belief. And once you see that, once you truly see that your doubt has never been proof of limitation, but proof of misdirected power, something begins to shift. Which brings us to the question that changes everything, and it's one that most people never think to ask themselves, especially when it comes to money, to abundance, to the life they're trying to build. We're going to get into that next, and I promise you it is simpler than you think and more powerful than you can imagine.
So here we are. We've uncovered something that most people spend years, sometimes entire lifetimes, never realizing. That belief is always at 100%. That doubt is not weakness, but misdirected power. That the system was never broken, it was just running on the wrong code. And now comes the question that I think is the most important one in this entire conversation. The one that Bashar asks so simply, so directly that it almost feels like a challenge. Why does it seem more logical to trust in something you don't prefer than to trust in something you do prefer? Sit with that for a moment, because on the surface, it sounds almost absurd. Why would anyone choose to believe in their limitations over their possibilities? Why would anyone invest their most powerful resource, their complete, unwavering trust, into a version of reality they don't even want? And yet, here we are. Here most of us are, doing exactly that every single day. When I was working in financial services, there was a concept we talked about constantly: risk aversion. The idea that human beings, when faced with a choice between a certain loss and an uncertain gain, will almost always choose to protect against the loss, even when the math clearly shows that the uncertain gain is the better bet. Even when every logical indicator points toward the opportunity, we pull back, we protect, we stay safe inside the familiar walls of what we already know. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it is one of the most deeply wired patterns in the human brain. We feel the pain of losing something twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of gaining something equivalent, which means, from a purely neurological standpoint, your brain is literally designed to trust the negative outcome more than the positive one. Not because you are weak, not because you are not spiritual enough or not doing the right rituals or not believing hard enough, but because your brain, in its attempt to protect you, has learned to treat familiar pain as safer than unfamiliar joy. And this, right here, is where manifestation and financial psychology intersect in the most profound way. Think about how this shows up in your relationship with money. How many times have you had an opportunity, a business idea, an investment, a chance to ask for the raise you deserved, and instead of moving toward it, you found yourself running through every possible way it could go wrong? How many times has your internal risk assessment completely overridden your intuition, your excitement, your knowing that this was the right move? That is loss aversion dressed up as wisdom. That is your subconscious mind doing exactly what it was programmed to do, protecting you from the unfamiliar, even when the unfamiliar is exactly where your abundance lives. I had a client once, a brilliant woman, incredibly capable, who came to me after years of making conservative financial decisions that kept her comfortable but never free. She had a solid portfolio, a steady income, a life that looked great on paper, but she felt caged. And every time an opportunity showed up that could have genuinely changed her financial trajectory, she found a reason to say no. When we started working together, she said something I will never forget. "I think I just don't believe good things can really happen to me." And I stopped her right there, because that wasn't true. She believed completely, powerfully, consistently that disappointment was coming. She trusted with absolute certainty that the thing she wanted most was just out of reach. She had so much faith in her financial ceiling that she had built her entire life around staying beneath it. She didn't lack belief, she had too much of it pointed directly at her limitation. So we started asking a different question. Not how do I get more belief, but why am I choosing this belief over the one I actually prefer? And this is where it gets really interesting, because when you start to investigate that question honestly, when you sit with it and really look, you almost always find the same thing underneath: a story, a moment, a conclusion that was drawn, often very early in life, that said, this is how things work for people like me. Maybe it was watching your parents struggle financially and deciding unconsciously that money was hard to come by. Maybe it was a business that failed or an investment that didn't pan out, and somewhere in the aftermath, you wrote a story that said, see, this is what happens when I try. Maybe it was something as simple as being told over and over that you needed to be realistic, that dreaming too big was dangerous, that security was more important than freedom. These stories are not the truth. They are conclusions drawn from limited data in moments of pain or fear or confusion that got filed away in your subconscious as facts. And your belief system, loyal and efficient as it is, has been operating on those facts ever since. Now, here is what I want you to understand, and this is the part that took me the longest to really accept, even after I had left the corporate world and started building a life on my own terms. Changing this is not about destroying the old belief. It is not about fighting your subconscious or white-knuckling your way into positivity or forcing yourself to feel something you don't feel. It is about recognizing, clearly, quietly, without judgment, that you made a choice, perhaps a very understandable choice given everything you were working with at the time, but a choice nonetheless. And because it was a choice, it can be chosen differently. Not all at once, not in a single meditation session or a single video, but decision by decision, moment by moment. Each time doubt shows up and you recognize it not as truth, but as misdirected trust, you have a window, a small, powerful quantum window to ask, what do I actually prefer to believe here? And then, and this is the part we're going to land on in our final block, you do something that sounds almost too simple to be this powerful. You trust that instead. Not perfectly, not without resistance, but deliberately, consciously, as an act of radical financial and energetic self-investment. Because here is what I know from everything I've learned, from the trading floors, from the consulting rooms, from the quiet mornings when I chose one more time to bet on myself instead of my fear. The return on investing your belief in what you prefer is infinite, and it compounds, just like the best investments always do.
We have traveled quite a distance together in this conversation, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because if you have made it this far, it tells me something about you. It tells me that some part of you already knows that what we have been talking about is real, that it applies to you, that there is something here worth paying attention to. So let's bring it home. We started by dismantling the myth that some people simply have more belief than others. We established that belief is not a resource that runs out. It is always operating at full capacity in every single person, in every single moment. Then we looked at what doubt actually is. Not weakness, not failure, not proof that manifestation doesn't work for you, but 100% of your trust fully invested in an outcome you don't prefer. And in our last block, we went even deeper into why the human mind finds it easier, safer, more logical to trust limitation over possibility. Into the stories we wrote, the conclusions we drew, the subconscious programming that has been quietly running the show. And now we arrive at the part that I think is both the simplest and the most profound of everything we have covered today. What do you actually do with all of this? Because information without application is just noise, and I have spent enough time in the world of finance and insurance to know that the most sophisticated analysis in the room means absolutely nothing if you never make a move. You can understand the market perfectly and still lose everything, because understanding and acting are two completely different things. So here's the move. Here's the practical, real, actionable shift that Bashar points to, and that I have applied imperfectly and consistently in my own life and in the lives of clients I have worked with. You redirect the trust. That's it. Not destroy the doubt, not eliminate the fear, not reprogram your subconscious overnight. You simply, deliberately, consciously, one moment at a time, take that same 100% of trust that has been flowing toward what you don't prefer, and you choose to point it somewhere else. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Caroline, that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do that when the doubt feels so loud, when the fear feels so real, when the bank account is right there, showing you exactly what you don't want to see? And I hear you. I've been there. I remember sitting with a financial statement that did not reflect the life I was trying to build, feeling the weight of every number on that page, feeling the pull to just accept it as my reality. But here's what I learned, both from Bashar's teachings and from years of working with energy, investment, and consciousness. The external numbers are always lagging indicators. In the financial world, we talk about leading and lagging indicators all the time. A lagging indicator tells you what already happened. A leading indicator tells you where things are going. Your current reality, your bank balance, your circumstances, your external world is a lagging indicator. It is showing you the result of where your belief has been invested up until now. It is not a prediction of where you're going. It is a receipt for where you have already been. And your belief, the direction of your trust, right now, in this moment, that is your leading indicator. That is the data point that actually matters. That is what is shaping the next version of your reality, right now, whether you're aware of it or not. So when doubt shows up, and it will because we're human, and this is a practice, not a destination, the work is not to make it disappear. The work is to look at it clearly and say, I see you. I know what you are. You are not evidence of my limitation. You are proof that I know how to invest completely in something, and I am choosing right now to invest that same energy somewhere else. And then you do it. You find the thought, even a small one, even an uncomfortable one, that points in the direction of what you prefer, and you trust it. Not because it feels certain, not because the evidence is there yet, but because you understand now that trust is the cause, not the effect. You do not trust because things have worked out. Things work out because you trust. I want to share something personal here. When I made the decision to walk away from the financial and insurance world, to stop selling my time and my energy to a system that was never going to give me the freedom I was looking for, I did not have all the answers. I did not have a perfect plan. I did not have a guaranteed income stream waiting for me on the other side. What I had was a decision, a conscious, deliberate, slightly terrifying decision to take the trust I had been pouring into my limitations, into the belief that I needed the corporate structure to be financially safe, that I wasn't the kind of person who got to work on her own terms, that freedom was too risky an investment, and redirect it, point it like a compass toward the version of my life I actually wanted to build. And I will not pretend it was linear. There were mornings when the old programming came back loud and clear. There were moments when every financial instinct I had been trained to trust was screaming at me to go back to what was safe. But I had a practice, and the practice was simple. Every time the doubt showed up, I would pause. I would recognize it for what it was, misdirected trust, not truth. And I would ask myself one question: what do I prefer to believe right now? And then I would choose that, again and again and again. That practice, that simple, repetitive, unglamorous act of redirecting trust is what changed everything for me. Not overnight, not without resistance, but completely and permanently, and in ways that still continue to surprise me. This is available to you too, not because I'm special, not because I had some advantage you don't have, but because the mechanism we've been talking about today, the 100% trust, the choice, the redirect, it's built into every single human being equally. It does not discriminate based on your past, your bank balance, your history with money, or how many times you have tried and felt like you failed. You have always had the power. You have always had the belief. The only thing that was ever missing was knowing where to aim it. And now you know. So the question I want to leave you with today, the one I want you to carry with you into your morning, into your financial decisions, into every moment when doubt tries to convince you it is stronger than your desire, is this: what do you prefer to believe? Not what does the evidence say, not what does the fear say, not what the old story says. What do you, the you that chose to watch this video, the you that is still here, the you that knows somewhere deeper than logic that a different life is possible, what do you prefer to believe? Choose that, trust that, invest in that, because that's where your freedom lives. That's where your abundance lives. That's where the version of your life that you have been trying to manifest through every affirmation, every vision board, every quiet prayer in the dark has been waiting for you all along. And it's not as far away as your doubt wants you to think.
Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this video. It truly means the world to me, and I hope this conversation brought you something real, something you can carry with you starting today. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to explore together. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You never know whose life you might change with a single video. The books that have shaped my journey and that I personally recommend are all linked in the description below. Go check them out. They are worth every page. And don't forget,
There is a free PDF in the description on how to interpret angel numbers and equal hours. Grab yours. It is completely free, and it might just change the way you see the signs the universe has been sending you all along. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.